And I got my private pilot license while I was still in high school.
Get out of here.
A lot of my friends got nice cars, and I didn't. I just saved my money, and then I spent it all on flight school. We could have been pretty easy to go tell our architects, well, make sure we're ADA compliant. And we would have hit, check, regulation met. ADA is woefully old. It's underwhelming. So we wanted to go above and beyond. Somebody needs to rewrite ADA. It needs to be done.
You're talking about, pioneering almost the recreation of airports.
Flying can be hard. We want to make sure it's easy as possible.
Yeah.
And whoever you are, whether you're a vacation or a business person, someone who's got abilities and disabilities, just make it easy. There's enough in life that makes life hard. Traveling shouldn't be.
You're listening to the NEI Pioneer Podcast, where we showcase and share the authentic stories of Northeast Indiana. If you're watching this podcast, you may notice that this isn't our normal studio. And you're right, that's because we're on location shooting another video series. So if you want to see more exciting videos that we're producing, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Or if you're listening, make sure you follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We are joined today by Scott Hinderman, who is the director of the Fort Wayne International Airport. Jonathan and Ryan lead an interesting conversation about what brought Scott to this region, what's changed at the airport, and what's still to come. Scott shares how he got his start in aviation as a young kid in Minnesota watching crop dusters take off. He then continues to share his journey to becoming the executive director of one of the most accessible and inclusive airports. It's obvious that Scott's passion is not only for aviation, but also for the community that the airport serves. So with that introduction, let's get into the podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the NEI Pioneer Podcast. Today, we've got a guest, Scott Hinderman, who is the Executive Director of Airports of Fort Wayne International Airport and
Smithfield.
I'm Jonathan Sackett.
I'm Ryan Twiss.
And you
I'm Scott Hinderman.
are Scott Hinderman. Scott, if we could, before we get into the whole airport thing, can we start way back? You said that you grew up in Minnesota.
I did. One of three kids, and my parents were farmers, and so I grew up in rural Minnesota, very small town, about 3,500 people, of Sleepy Eye, Minnesota.
Sleepy Eye, Minnesota.
Yeah, if you ever watched that show, Little House on the Prairie, Sleepy Eye was mentioned, so it was really close to Walnut Grove. And
Okay.
that's about all the fame that
It's kind
came
of a
out
suburb
of
of
that town,
Walnut
so-
Grove.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so funny because Laura Ingalls, who was the author of all that, we had a whole bunch of stuff in our library. I told you I went to school there. I went to school in Minnesota, so it's always near and dear to my heart. I think, so your dad was a farmer his whole life, or was he in the military as well?
No, he was a farmer. Well, yes, because that goes back to the draft days. So he did 2 years in the Army, but he was a farmer's kid, and then he went to 2 years in the military, and then he raised his family, or me, on the farm.
Is that what influenced you to go into the military yourself?
Maybe a little bit, but I knew I always wanted to get in aviation watching the crop dusters, and then I off to college, and I quickly figured out that I can't afford college, so the military was the bigger influence.
The only option. So, but how far did you get in the military? As far as ranking, as far as how long you were in?
I went in, in college, I signed up for officer candidate school for the Marine Corps, so I came out of the military, which if you turn back life, I would do it all again, but I went in as a second lieutenant, and I got out as a captain.
Oh, wow.
4.5 years later.
4.5 years you were in there?
Yep.
What did you guys farm on the family farm? And then I'm interested, you mentioned the crop duster. I just kind of want to hear how farming turns into a love of aviation into where you are now.
South central, northwestern Minnesota, so it's pretty much corn, beans. Then there were some peas for Del Monte, and but the farming was not unlike here, just maybe a shorter growing season.
Okay.
But yeah, we
probably a much shorter growing season, having lived there.
They call it Minnesota, so there's 3 months of bad ice fishing. So no.
Beer drinking and ice fishing
That's
is
great.
the same time.
But as a kid, you see the crop dusting going around, so I enjoyed that, and I don't know, I was fortunate when I was well under age of driving. I had a small motorcycle, and I could figure how to get to the local airport by taking gravel roads, staying away from the police, and I would just go to the airport and bug the guys, have airplanes, and they'll say, hey, if I give you a ride, will you just shut up and go away? I go, sure. And I did. I got a ride every now and then, and I'd go away for about 20 minutes and come back. So, I just fell fascinated in aviation, and it stuck. I stayed in my career.
That's amazing.
So what types of aircrafts did you fly?
Well, I was in high school, and so it was the first day of high school baseball, my senior year. My parents said, "Hey, we're going to go to the game tonight," and I go, "Oh, I didn't go out for baseball this year." So
Surprise!
So what have you been doing? I said, "Well, I've been taking flight lessons," and they wouldn't believe me. So after school, come on down to the airport, and I was already taking flight lessons, and I got my private pilot license while I was still in high school.
Get out of here! Wait, how did you pay for it?
I had a lot of jobs while I was in high school.
Okay.
It was clear with my family, if you wanted to have fun, you had to have a job to support your fun activities. So, if you want to get a date, there wasn't any money from mom and dad, so you had a job. So, and I had a job, and a lot of my friends got nice cars, and I didn't. I just saved my money, and then I spent it all on flight school.
Wow, that's incredible. So, wait, were they pleased with this decision, or?
They weren't unpleased.
Okay. It's one thing to say, "Hey, I haven't been going to baseball practice. I've been hanging out and smoking cigarettes and drinking with my friends."
Well, that I didn't say.
Okay.
So.
I just didn't do that while I was flying. Okay. And then, and what kind of plane did you learn on?
Cessna 150 and 152 and a 172. So the two single-engine airplanes. You'll see them, the high-wing aircraft. They're still pretty common today for single-engine flight instruction aircraft.
Okay, it's so weird. I just have to tell you this as a side note. One of my college roommates, they just put you with people in a dorm, so I didn't know this guy at all. Great guy, but he had his own plane, and it was an Indian.
Yeah.
So a single engine,
yep.
Right? And then he used to. I don't know why this is, and I hope I'm not exposing myself to something here. But he would say, "Hey, just go along with whatever I say." So we'd go down to pick up the plane. He'd say, "Yeah, this is a flight instructor." So then we'd get in the plane and we could fly it. I don't know. I still to this day don't really understand. Like there was no protocol. Maybe there's a different protocol now, but
it's reasonably loose.
Did I ever tell you that?
No. Hopefully that means he actually had a pilot certificate, not that he was still a student pilot.
He did, yeah.
So.
And by the way, he flew. I don't know who trained the guy, but it was fun because my college roommate had an airplane.
The part is if you were able to walk away from every landing, I guess he was a good pilot, right?
I'm still walking today, so we're doing all right. So let's talk a little bit more about the path. So. You basically lied to your parents, and then you started taking these lessons. You tell them because they were going to come see you at a baseball game. That
right?
You weren't in there.
Were you aware that they thought you'd been going to baseball practice?
Not really.
Okay.
This is going to be the whole subject of the podcast now. So
it
what else
be.
have you lied about?
Can we get your parents on the phone? Let's
Funny, we got a surprise for you. Here's your parents on the phone.
No, I went to the University of North Dakota, which is Grand Forks, North Dakota, because they had a pretty good-sized aviation program. I was on the path of being a professional pilot for a living. And so while there, the curriculum, I got my commercial certificate and my instrument rating. And then one summer between colleges, I flew area photography for a guy. And I still like flying. I'm not an active pilot right now. But when I was doing that, flying for a living and not for fun, lost some of its appeal.
Yeah.
But I still liked being around airports, and I already said Officer Candidate School program. I was able to go in with a kind of maybe everybody says that, but I got to know what I was going to do when I finally took the oath as a second lieutenant. And I was going to be an aircraft maintenance officer. So I was going to be aircraft maintenance officer, but that's what they called it. But it's actually helicopters. So I was in charge of the 53 Echoes, the 46s, and the Hueys. While I was in charge of the maintenance of those aircraft.
Wow.
So after 4.5 years of being in charge of maintenance, you work hard. So the reward was short-lived. You work hard, you fix them, then they go out and break them, they come back broken. Dang it. So at some point I figured, hey, maintenance might not be the right thing, and I kind of fell backwards into airports. My wife is from Dickinson, North Dakota. I'm from Minnesota, so we kind of got out and said, hey, Fargo's a good place. It's kind of halfway between family.
Yep.
Started working at the airport there, and the second snowstorm, and said, all right, we both forgot how cold it is up here.
Yeah.
So I started looking maybe a little bit farther south, the the call home.
Well, it's easy to forget there in the summer because it's nice. You've got the lakes, and then winter hits somewhere around June. So
The 4 weeks. My dad's family's from the Twin Cities, so we've spent a lot of winters in that area, and yeah, it can be oppressive.
It's cold. My brother and sister still live up there, and I always tell them, says, that's a place that you fly into, go play snowmobiles, do whatever you got to do, ice fishing, and then you fly away. To be there all winter, it can be long.
Yeah, well, it's funny because all my college roommates stayed though. So I mean, there's something, and besides that, the city is. I have to say this about the Twin Cities: they're so clean. They don't have the street vendor problems that New York has or anything like that. So I loved my time there. But okay, so as you're going through this, what got you into more of an administrative role versus? Because you wanted to stop being a mechanic.
Yeah, I kind of came up in the airport in operations, so I was kind of in charge of the airfield, the buildings, airports, maybe like all our industries, heavily regulated. I think if there's a federal agency that ends with A, they have some regulatory arm over aviation. But so I grew up in aviation and in operations at airports, and then before you know it, you get promoted a couple times, and you start losing doing the day-to-day stuff, and you turn more into overseeing those who are doing that, and then you start working towards administration. And
do you miss that at all?
I would never work at a large hub airport. Because when you work at a large hub airport, this is what you're going to do. They got so many people. At a smaller airport or a Fort Wayne size, you're a little bit of jack of all trades. You get to do a little bit of everything. So. Yeah, and get to or have to, whatever your perspective is.
Yeah.
But so we're doing a lot of construction, so you get to go out and watch that. There's nothing wrong with walking the ramp in the morning, so you can do some jet fuel in the morning. It's still in your bloodstream. It gets you excited.
Well, see, I don't know if you know my background. I come from advertising, and we made some reality shows, and some of my guys did, what was the reality show? It was Airport, I think it was called. But you guys have seen any of these? They go in there, and you find all these people that missed their flights, I got to tell you, just even watching that show, tough job, man.
It can be.
Yeah.
Especially with... Well, whenever you miss your flight, it seems you always miss a flight when you are in a position where I have to be there. And some people don't understand that if it's bad weather, would you rather be on the ground and mad or 30,000 foot and saying, ugh,
I don't want
bad weather. So, but that's part of it. The airlines are awesome. If you want to travel a great distance in a short period of time, they get you there. But there are times that there are some fail points, and it can be frustrating.
Yeah, I bet. Well, one of the things, so Ryan and I were talking before the show, and it was interesting to me. I moved here from Chicago. So when I saw your longest runway here in Fort Wayne is it 13,000 feet?
No, it's actually 11,984 feet.
Okay, 12,000.
That's what I do. I call it 12,000. If somebody needs that last 16 feet, well, they're probably in trouble.
Grab the grass. It's fine. Well, okay.
They have bigger issues if that 16 feet comes in. Yeah, that's funny.
Okay, so do you know how long the longest runway is at O'Hare?
I don't.
13,000.
It is.
Yeah. So that to me, that was astonishing. I mean, so Fort Wayne, which God only knows the amount of traffic that we do, let alone in O'Hare or a monstrous place like that. Why do we have a runway that long? Like, where did that come from? How did we get to that?
It's been there a long time. Back in the 80s, we had some significant cargo, and the older the aircraft are, the more pavement they needed.
It also goes by the size of the aircraft, doesn't it?
It does, but so we are 150 foot wide with paved shoulders, which Chicago is probably 200 foot wide with paved shoulders, because they're handling 747s and larger. I mean, that and the 787 Dreamliner. So we're not getting those, but
not yet.
Not yet.
You guys are growing, and we're going to get into that.
We are growing, and other than Grissom Air Force Base, their runway is 12,500, but as a private, as a civilian-owned airport, Fort Wayne has the longest runway in the state.
It's one of the longest in the country, is what I'm.
It could be, but once you get farther out west, where you're starting to get some elevation, right?
Yeah.
Air's a little bit less than up there, so I don't know what Denver's airport runways are, but the longer or higher elevation, sometimes the runways get a little bit longer. We don't have to worry too much about elevation here in the Midwest.
No.
So.
But I'd also imagine a community with elevation like in Denver, it's probably harder to find long flat plains too, where it's easy to put one of those. So you have a little bit of that.
What is it? Probably 20 plus years ago. Oh no, maybe 25 or 30 years ago, they built Denver Airport. Old Stapleton was kind of surrounded by town, and they needed to grow, so they just 45 miles outside of the city on flat prairie or the high flat plains, and built an airfield.
But see, you guys. So, just out of curiosity, have you ever been? Have recruiters ever come after you for working at another airport?
Sure. Hey, I'll be honest. Before here, my wife and I and the kids. We were in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and we came here.
Beautiful.
And I'll say it. I thought I was going to be in Fort Wayne for somewhere between 5 and 7 years, and I'll move on to my next opportunity. And 17 years later, I'm still here, and it's going to sound corny, and I can honestly say I mean it. We kind of fell in love with Fort Wayne. Whether it's because I fell in love with Fort Wayne or Fort Wayne fit my personality, I'm not so sure which, but
probably both.
Maybe a little bit of both. And we like the community, and all my kids are now having kids, and 2 of them are called Fort Wayne home. So
excellent.
I think if I decided I wanted to, which I don't, but if I wanted to leave, I think my wife would say, well, come back and visit sometime. The grandkids are here, and this is probably where she's going to stay.
I'm putting you in a commercial for that. You know how long Ryan's been here at NEI?
14 years. So you predate me a little bit. Can I? When you came in from Cheyenne, was it in your position as executive director? Were you recruited?
I came in as director of operations and facilities.
Okay.
And there was a little bit of a succession planning, and that's why I came. And I liked the community.
Sure.
March of 2012 is when I took this position that I'm in now.
Okay.
Or the role.
Wow. And then, so when you were talking about the expansion, so there was big news on you guys maybe a month ago about the direct flights again to Detroit. So can you talk a little bit about that? Just because I'm a newcomer, so like you used to have direct flights to Detroit, and now you've got them again. What was the time frame, and what happened?
Well, hopefully nobody does a fact check on me, but
just say approximate. That way,
there you go. That's the key word.
Give or take. Really, any of those.
Give or take
works.
will work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Delta pulled Detroit service from Fort Wayne, give or take, in the November time frame of 22.
22. Okay.
And
so COVID.
It was.
Yeah.
And they took it. We were one of the last airports that they pulled service to Detroit out of, and it got to the point where they pulled service out of Detroit. The main line going to other places. So they could have all the service they want to Detroit, but you couldn't go anywhere once you got there.
Oh, I did not realize that.
Delta down or pulled capacity out of the hub of Detroit.
Oh.
And then Detroit was the weakest.
So we were just more of a byproduct.
Right.
That's what
Collateral damage.
Kind of that hub and spoke, right?
Yeah.
So we're a spoke, right? We travel, unless it's going to a beach with someplace with Allegiant. You go to a hub, everybody gets off the airplane, they reshuffle the deck, and then go on to your final destination.
Okay.
Well, they took a lot of capacity out of Detroit proper. So once you got there, they didn't have aircraft to get you where you want to go.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think September or October last year, they started putting mainline, which they always had mainline. They started rebuilding Detroit again to where they had added capacity. And once they did that, they needed to now start bringing us, Fort Wayne's, into Detroit so they can
Get the spokes back.
Get the spokes back.
Yeah.
However, about a month ago, so roughly, give or take, we made the announcement. They brought, and since then, when they did that, Fort Wayne was the only airport, and since then, we have still been the only airport
Really?
to get Detroit back. It's coming. They didn't do me well, yeah, they did. They did Fort Wayne a solid, but they have a plan to bring other communities back. As an airport director, you can talk to the airline and say, hey, bring us this service, and they'd look at it, but we worked with the business community to get Detroit back. We did a letter writing campaign. Don't write letters to me. We told them to write them directly to the Delta's senior route planners.
Yeah. What happens? So if somebody writes to you, do you forward that on? Is that how that
I
works?
do, but
it probably doesn't go anywhere.
It does, but it means less, right? So when
Okay.
they're sitting at their desk and every
Yeah,
morning
they're
they
like,
get
"Of
the
course
mail
you
calls,
want it." Yeah.
So they got a lot of good letters. And then we did direct the business community. Says, don't just write a letter and say, please, send them, hey, my travel annual budget is this, and I fly this many segments, or I frequently go to this destination. And by the way, all those frequencies are typically on a Delta carrier as opposed to their competition. And that helped. I'd like to say that we did good things, and I think I was a part of it. But the community got Detroit back, not me.
Really?
So,
Well, I would take full credit for it if I were you.
well, might as well, because if something goes away, I lose the credit.
Is it? Take it while you got it. Okay, so we got Detroit back. What's next on the agenda? Because as you guys are expanding, are there other target airports that you're looking at, or?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't stop moving until you're dead. So we're always going to be looking, and we have been talking with the air carriers to try to get Denver in for years. I think we were so close. We have had it right before the pandemic, and then the pandemic, everything got reshuffled. So I think we're close again. Having service to Denver, you're putting me on the spot a little bit, or I'm putting myself on the spot. We have about 15 people a day that go to Denver. And to be fair, either they go to Denver or Denver came here and then they go home, because we don't get to see who's flying. We just see that there's a person. So that's not much. We're not going to be able to get Denver service with our destination, Denver. But Denver is the 5th largest airport in our country, and service to Denver really opens up easy access to the Dakotas, Idahos, the New Mexicos, and the entire western seaboard in a one-stop shop where you can make a quick connection. So I think we're close. I think it's going to happen. I don't believe it will happen this year, but it would be nice if we could make the announcement and then they start flying it early next year. But I can't sit here and say, hey, on this date, the tickets will be available to sale. We don't have that done.
Well,
there's a good amount of work that has to happen between now and then.
Well, all of your announcements are my announcements. So the sooner you can get that, the sooner I can get on that. And I know Ryan's chomping at the bit, but I just want to squeeze one more question in quick.
I roll.
Thank you. Okay. Look, you don't want to get me. I was laughing before the show. Let's not get me laughing during. Okay. So, excuse me for I don't know what I don't know.
Sure.
So the thing is that the air traffic across the United States is an algorithm, right? So how do you know where you should or shouldn't be expanding to? And the reason why I ask that is because I find that everything is either by design or default. So if you say, okay, we've got 16 people wanting to go to Denver, but that's not necessarily by design, because there may be more people that have relatives there and just have chosen to drive or something like that. How do you guys go about calculating where you should have direct destinations to?
Yeah, it's extremely difficult to grab the drive traffic.
Yeah.
That's
I mean, unless you're mapping credit card path or something.
well,
that's
that or if
tough.
you got the entire country geo-gridded,
Yeah.
which is, I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
That's above my
the sky grid. Yeah.
So, but we have the ability through software. We can see where people are flying, so we know how many people are moving from our area, or even people who live in Fort Wayne, but they choose a different airport to start their flight with. So we can see that. We don't know who they are because of the Federal Privacy Act.
Sure.
But we know that someone who lived downtown Fort Wayne, got in a car, drove to, I don't know, Dayton, to started their flight, and that's maybe okay. Maybe their mom lives in Dayton, and they want to go fly with mom someplace. I don't know. But we have that information. We have our top destinations of where we have that are not served. West Coast is a very large population base. So if we could get something to get to the West Coast a little bit quicker, a little bit more convenient, that would be Denver. But I do agree with you, there should be some stimulation.
Yeah.
So if we have 15 today, well, my wife and I, we didn't go skiing last year, and if all of a sudden we had direct service
Maybe
taking
that
a
would
ski
encourage.
trip for a 4-day weekend would be quite appealing.
Yeah.
And if she's listening, she could tell me, that's a good Christmas gift. So
I like this.
So my question, we're an economic development organization. This is an economic development podcast. One of the things that I think most casual listeners may not fully grasp is what impact an airport like Fort Wayne, even in, having the spoke type of airport in a community like ours means from a business perspective and an economic development perspective. Because even as you're describing it, say you and your wife might be more inclined to go fly, but most of the traffic is business traffic, correct? Or at least a large percentage of it. So what does that mean as you're targeting? It's not just a destination flight like a lot of us think of taking for a vacation, but what does that mean for business growth? And because you really, Fort Wayne Airport outpunches its weight class considerably.
So when you think economic development, you got to go beyond what we're talking about as far as air service.
Right.
It's the company that's got their own personal corporate jet that they move around. I'll take the airport and similar to the railroad. Way back, and I'm not a historian, but the railroads going across the country, and wherever that railroad had to resupply, there was a small community that started to grow. And then, hey, they didn't fall victim, but then the next thing came in was the interstate. So roads, whenever there was roads where, hey, I can drive from, before towns started growing around roads. Even today, if you're a nice sized community and you don't have an interstate, it's a little bit harder to grow.
Right. Sure.
Well, that's true of an airport. If you don't have an airport in your community that can get commerce, whether it's cargo or people, to your community or your community out to do commerce, growth will be somewhat challenged. So we did a 2019, so pre-pandemic, we did an economic impact statement on what FWA and Smithfield, we grouped them together, what it did, what's the input to our area, and it was $584 million a year.
Wow.
So
Wow.
you guys are economic development, so you probably are better at how an economic impact statement is developed. But even if that's wrong, let's say it's 30% wrong,
Then it's still directional at least,
it's
right?
still a very
Yeah.
large number.
Yeah,
so
sure.
it's a big impact of what we're bringing to Northeast Indiana.
Hi, everyone. We want to take a quick moment to shout out our podcast sponsors. Now, first, you might be wondering who I am, so let me introduce myself. I am Hannah Hannigan, and normally I'm behind the camera as the videographer, but today I wanted to be in front of the camera to shout out the people who made this podcast possible. Barrett McNagny and Sweetwater Sound are the two sponsors of our podcast, and they're both located in Northeast Indiana. If you don't already know who they are, let me introduce them to you. We're going to start with Barrett McNagny. As Fort Wayne has grown, the Barrett Law Firm has grown with it. Founded in 1876, Barrett McNagny is one of the oldest law partnerships in Indiana, and it's among one of the largest just in Northeast Indiana. They have the breadth of experience across a wide range of practice areas to provide you trusted legal counsel where and when you need it. And Sweetwater is actually the one we were able to purchase most of our audio and video gear from to make this podcast. So if you like how this podcast sounds or how it looks, be sure to check them out. Sweetwater, the nation's largest, and I would also add friendliest destination for music gear, is also your one-stop shop for all things podcasting. From audio interfaces, recording software, mixers, microphones, cameras, and lighting, Sweetwater has everything to get your podcast up and running. Enjoy personalized gear advice from their dedicated team of sales engineers, as well as free technical support to get your podcast connected and up and running. Really, what's not to love about that? So whether you already have a following or you're still chasing the next big thing, Sweetwater is going to be the ones to help you create a podcast that everyone will be talking about. So if you're interested in either of these companies, be sure to check out the links in our description. Now, let's get back to the podcast.
And I'm sorry, I compare things a lot to O'Hare just because I still have a home there and I spend so much time there. The problem that O'Hare has had is, and again, please forgive me on my statistics or whatever, I have been told that O'Hare accounts for 80% of all delays in the United States because it's such a central hub. Does that sound realistic to you?
I can't comment on that statistics, but the other thing that hurts O'Hare is that now they do have a new runway.
Yeah.
They had a lot of traffic trying to get in O'Hare, And then whenever there's moisture, high winds, snow,
UFOs.
well, anything.
There was
you
a
know,
UFO at the United thing. I don't know if anybody
You know,
knows
surprisingly though, I mean, even rain, they really reduce
yeah.
the frequency of incoming traffic on rain. Even on a nice summer day, if the rain's coming straight down, it's not windy, just because of the contaminant on the runways, they can't land as frequent.
Yeah.
So,
Well, they've also had problems because Park Ridge is the suburb right there, and the challenge that they've had is the air pollution, the noise pollution. So the community has been fighting back O'Hare for the past 20 years. Don't expand, don't expand, don't expand. They got that one runway put in there. Gosh, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, 5 years ago, something like that. 5. So they got that runway put in, and that was a bloodbath to get that in there. So lots of community fights, things like that. And you guys are expanding a ton. So I was curious as to, what the plan is, like the way you guys foresee, because I think you're in phase 1 or phase 2 of where you're trying to go. Can you talk to us about that a little bit?
yeah, a little bit. Let me bounce before I hit the terminal and that expansion. But, even like land, neighborhoods, noise, we do our very best to protect the ascension and descension paths of the runways. So we have...
LA is a nightmare, by the way, with that.
It is.
If you want to feel like you're on a rocket, take off out of there.
Or even the one that I think is a hoot is when you go into San Diego.
Yeah, yes.
I think you just about, your wheels bounce off a parking deck right at the end of the runway.
Yeah,
so,
they do.
But, I mean, that's what the beauty of the Midwest. We typically have land, Fort Wayne, it feels like we build out less than build up because we are blessed with land. So we've got FWA pretty well protected around, and even some of the land that's being built, it's with a compatible use. So we don't put a major subdivision at the end of the runway, but hey, if there's large warehouses, that's kind of okay.
Sure.
If there's railroad or something like that, hey, they make noise, we make noise, we should get along.
Let's make noise together.
There you go.
I think that's what we're going to call this episode, Scott.
And then our terminal project. So we are in a significant expansion. What the community probably doesn't know is we started that thing back in 2017. We wanted it. We knew we had to do something, but again, the FAA said, hey, if you think you need to do something, you have to prepare a concept study first. So we did a concept study, which was the first task or dollar spent on our overall expansion. And the concept study said, hey, you got some areas are good with the right amount of square foot, and some areas are woefully undersized on your terminal building. And the other thing is we had 8 gates, but our 8 gates were designed back when we were flying turboprop aircraft. So you couldn't park 8 aircraft because the aircraft have all gotten larger that serve Northeast Indiana. So you couldn't park 8 gates at the same time on our terminal, so we really didn't have 8 gates.
Okay.
So you had 8 doors.
We had 8 doors, and
8-ish. We'll call it that.
And then the other thing, if you guys
Give or
remember, and if you can't, that's great. I probably shouldn't bring it up, but at one point, gates 1 through 4 at the airport were you walked outside to get on the airplane. They were called ground boarding gates, so which is cool in the 80s. But who does that now? The level of service or expectation is higher.
Yeah.
So we are
unfortunately, probably yes.
Well, it's good. I don't know if you've been to the airport recently, but phase 1 completed around April last year. We rolled right into and because of the bill funding, and we competed for and we received enough grant money to where we merged phase 2 and 3. So we will be done with our terminal project in August of 2025.
Wow.
Which is significantly brought forward because phase 3 was going to be done in August of 27. So we took 2 years. Can't quantify this because, it isn't there, but whenever you take construction and bring it forward, you've saved money. Just by consolidating the project. If we could leave the building and just tell contractor, get her done, it would not take this long. But just like your house, if you've ever remodeled your house or do it yourself remodel of your bathroom, it's painful.
Oh, so you do know Ryan. Let's talk about Ryan's bathroom.
Yeah, how many trips to Menards did your terminal expansion take?
We might not be
Scott's
going.
kind of a do-it-all kind of guy, I think.
But the thing is we've been doing our building and operating in our building at the same time.
Yeah,
so,
build the car while you're driving it.
Yeah,
Right?
and that absolutely adds a significant amount of complexity. to the project. So
It's beautiful though. I
Yeah.
recommend getting out there if anyone who's listening hasn't. It's amazing.
You know, if somebody's listening and they want to and they're not buying a ticket anytime soon, I do say it's not my airport; it's the community's asset. Give me a call, give me a couple dates, and make sure I can get it done. But I'll give somebody a tour. It's when our terminal is done, this part that is done, it's world class.
Yeah.
And when we're done, we are gonna have a very nice airport, and which is cool because if you're coming into Fort Wayne or Northeast Indiana to do business and you've not been here before and you're gonna go either call on a company or consider relocating to the region, and you land at our airport and you can say, okay, this is a great first impression.
Yeah.
So if you looked on a map and Fort Wayne says, looks like it's a Midwest town and maybe kind of what our airport was before, it was dated. It was always clean. We did our very best, but it was dated. But our facility is going to be top notch when we're done.
Well,
I guess that's me breaking my arm a little bit.
No,
but
but go
it's
ahead.
me and
Here,
staff. We've
let
done a
me
really
do
good
it.
job.
The facility is going to be top notch when they're done. And if I could pull on that just a little bit more. So I have been out there. I've been fortunate to get a couple of tours from you. The attention to detail, as it blows me away every time I'm there. The little things. And granted, I'm walking around with the executive director, so you're pointing out all the things you're proud of. But I think even as a casual observer, I would notice some of those. But the thing that really kind of emotionally gets me going is the commitment to accessibility. And airports are about accessibility to a community. You've made it accessible really to all people. Can you talk a little bit about some of those attention to detail?
I will brag on myself a little bit. The Great Lakes chapter, which is 11 states for the Airports Association, and we won last year's award for universal design.
Mm-hmm.
And
I know we forwarded yeah, of course, man. Anytime you get a press release, it comes across.
so when we, when we started doing the design, I like what you said earlier. Can't remember what the subject was, but you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Turnstone and Northeast Indiana Disability Coalition, NIDAC. I might have that acronym wrong, but extremely helpful. We kind of went and says ADA is woefully old. It's underwhelming. So we wanted to go above and beyond, even with Turnstone here. What a great asset for our community. But, when they have a tournament, it looks like the Olympics are coming through our airport with all the teams. They wear their jerseys, their uniforms. It's like, so we wanted to make sure that we were good. And then we tasked our architects as, let's make sure we're good. And those people who need it, it's there. And those who don't, you might not even know it. So it's universal design. So it's things that we've done. You walk into our terminal in the remodeled areas, and if you're an individual who has hearing aids, if you have the right ones or the newer style, it automatically Bluetooths right into the airline announcements, so you don't miss your flight.
Awesome.
We actually have a cane trail in our terminal. I think we're the only airport in the country that has one, and okay. That wasn't us being creative. That was the assistance of Turnstone and NIDAC. If you go down the concourse, and this is another one, they told us there's very few people in the United States or in the world that are 100% blind. Legally blind, yes, but 100% blind. So they said whenever there's a decision point, make some kind of an adjustment in your ceiling feature. Change the color so we can see the shade. So if there's a gate, there's a big header or a decision point or a different color in the ceiling, bathrooms, all that stuff. So it's more visible.
See, that's what's so impressive to me. It's funny because sometimes, not just in advertising but in life, second to market wins. And if you take a look at, Yahoo was the thing until Google came along, right? And the thing about it is most of my time in airports has been spent at L.A., LaGuardia and O'Hare. So that's just nature of the beast. But the thing is they're a freight train that they can't turn around now. So if you want to add new functionality or anything to those airports, expansion can't do it. There's nowhere else to go. But more importantly, you're talking about, pioneering almost the recreation of airport because you can do it.
I think so. But we get to do it and we're doing it now. You can have a whole career in an airport, and you're going to do one, possibly one, maybe two, major terminal renovations. You might do a little bit of a deal, but major terminal, they don't happen a lot unless you move around and happen to always go to the airport that's about ready to do one. So we wanted to make sure we did it right. And, some of the things we actually have, and we worked with AWS. We put an adult changing table in the family restroom. And we got that from a person who was wheelchair bound. He flies a lot. He has a caregiver fly with him. And the caregiver says, I'm getting to the point where I'm having a hard time lifting him. So what you don't know, right? Well, why do you have to lift him? He says, well, when I have to change him, we travel with a blanket. We'll go into a family restroom. I put the blanket on the floor, pick him up out of the chair so I could change him. Okay, that's appalling. I don't want to go on the floor of a public restroom. Our restrooms are clean, but I still don't want to go on the floor of a public restroom. We actually put, AWS gave us a grant to put a mat table in. And innovative, creative, I don't know, felt like the right thing to do. So it's just helpful. And I do think in the next 10 years that will be ADA requirement.
Yeah.
Somebody needs to rewrite ADA. It needs to be done. It won't be me, but somebody needs to rewrite that.
It really is. I mean, you got this sensory room that.
Yeah, the sensory room is amazing. We get people who go in there. It is designed for people on the autistic spectrum.
Yeah.
It is a code to where you go and you hit a button, no questions asked. We'll open the door from you. It goes to our firehouse. We'll open the door. People can go in there, and when they leave, we don't let somebody else go in there until we call our custodial staff, go in there and clean it, because we don't. But we are finding that people are going in there, maybe aren't on the spectrum, but they just need to decompress from a crappy day at work. And they don't want all the people around them, but they go in there for 20 minutes, and it's a nice amenity. It's being used a lot more than I was going to anticipate, or I did anticipate.
But what just to kind of put a bow on that, what I think is amazing about our community in Northeast Indiana is really leaning into the assets we have here. AWS, Turnstone, Easter Seals Arc, just a number of fantastic provider organizations that work with individuals with disabilities. And to be known as a community that is open to welcoming for families with individuals with disabilities in their family, or maybe the individuals themselves, to come here, but to literally be the first place someone, maybe the first time they've ever actually physically interacted with our community, and to see all of those attention to detail is just so emotionally powerful for me to think of how could you be a better front door than the airport, but to that level of welcoming, I think it's just really, really amazing.
It is
Thank
cool.
you for doing that.
And some of the things that we did are just, I'm never going to use. One of the things, we actually had a mother's pod. I don't know if or nursing pod, not a mother's, a nursing pod, where a mom who wanted some privacy could go in there.
Yeah, it was like
it was a
phone
pod.
booth,
It
right?
was a phone booth, but it's a lot better than having,
Yeah.
like I know, but it's better than having to go sit in the stall of the restroom.
Seems like it would be better, yes.
Well, now with this project, we actually built 2 mothers' rooms where they have running water, to where if you have a breast pump, you can wash it out. They have a chair in there for if mom's traveling with a toddler, so they don't go feed their baby, but leave the toddler out, so take the kid with you. So, but they're just nice. We get, I like what you said, the attention to detail that we've worked hard to put into this thing, mostly because you get to do it once.
Yeah.
If you
Hopefully.
miss something, it gets kind of expensive to redo it.
Well, how much of the expansion and these little things that you guys, these idiosyncrasies that you guys have incorporated, how much of that is proactive versus reactive? Because you got to have, 1 foot in the future and 1 foot in the here and now and the problem that you're solving for.
When we're all done, all the soft costs, we are awarded. So our project there's not a next phase that we haven't awarded yet. So we know pretty much we're gonna be right around that $140 million when we're done.
Wow.
So, and proactive and reactive, we could have been pretty easy to go tell our architects well, make sure we're ADA compliant.
Yeah,
and we would have won,
right?
and we would have had check regulation met by meeting with for me it was, hey, the community has Turnstone and we see them in our terminal building on a regular basis. So, well, let's do something other than that.
Yeah.
So, Turnstone, we met with them. They came out a gazillion times. They were good enough to bring somebody out, and NIDAC got involved, AWS got involved, and they brought somebody out with a disability, hearing, visual, and they so it wasn't overwhelming to me. They brought them out one at a time, and the person was amazing. She says, "No questions off the table. Ask what you need to know." And they were just understandable, saying, "You don't know what I know. You don't know the challenges that they go through when they travel."
Yeah.
So we asked a lot of questions. We took notes. We sent them, made sure that we captured all the notes, and then we tasked our architectural team to be thinking this way. And I don't know, again, break my arm a little bit, but I think we hit that mark. I mean, we're doing well, and I guarantee you in 10 years, I hope, there will be a new amenity that we didn't include because it wasn't a thing yet. But, then how do we incorporate some of that thing? Flying can be hard. We want to make sure it's easy as possible.
Yeah.
And whoever you are, whether you're a vacationer, a business person, someone who's got abilities and disabilities, just make it easy. There's enough in life that makes life hard. Traveling shouldn't be.
Speaking of challenges, did as you guys are expanding and as you're going through all this, the Amazon had built a mega center basically right outside of you guys. Did that cause any trouble as you guys were expanding, or did that make you switch initiatives because it's there?
Actually, I don't know if you know this or you're leading me, but we own the land. We sold the land to Amazon to build that facility.
Did you know that? No.
Now, what they did
he knew that.
is they built it, and they're doing a large trucking operation. I really tried to get them not to build there and to build on the airport, so where, maybe someday they could do what they're doing today. But if it was close to the runway, they could also turn it into an Amazon Air hub. They were very clear that they wanted to be not on the airport, and we were able to come to an agreement, and I thought it was a great idea to bring Fortune 100 company to the area, and it's a lot of jobs. I think that facility in itself is 1,000 jobs. So it was fun being part of that. And then when they started building, when they were working 24 hours a day, moving dirt in rain and hail, and they had a time frame to get that project done. They moved really quick. It was fun to watch come out of the ground.
Yeah, I'm sure. One of the last questions that I had was about the air show that we have here. Now, being newer here, I haven't seen it yet. So could you talk about that? I'm sure what is it, June or July?
It'll be the second full weekend the first full weekend after the 4th of July in 2025. Next year, not this year.
Okay.
They have, and I say that is, so the air show is at FWA. It's on our airport, but it's really an Air National Guard event. They are the coordinators, if you will. It's all on their ramp. Parking is on the air in the fields, but it's a great show. If you don't even have to like airplanes, anybody who should go, you go to an air show, you typically have to pay a gate to get in. It's a free air show. It's just amazing. I might be a little bit biased because I like aviation.
You're there for the military stuff too.
Yeah, it is. Right? But if you look at aviation, whether it's the military aircraft or the civilian, they're flying safe, but they're flying the aircraft at the edge of its envelope and then really close to the ground. Okay. And to get to see what aircraft can do and then what our Department of Defense can do, it's pretty amazing. Again, I got my private pilot license because I could go out and touch an airplane without getting tackled. You can't do that now. So you go to an air show as a because that's kind of fun, right? You go out to the air show and you see kids just looking up. Yeah. And some of them will run into another watcher because they're not looking in front of them, they're looking in the air. It's kind of what the air show is all about. Getting people excited about aviation, getting them to see some things that they don't normally get to. They're walking on the ramp. They can go up and sit inside an aircraft, which kind of hard to do nowadays, right? Because we have fences around airports.
Security is a little bit tighter nowadays, perhaps.
And then it's even more tight when you start looking at military aircraft.
Oh, yeah.
So you can get up there, and it's cool. And then the Air National Guard just does it right. If you're going to have an event, and you can have an event like this, and then it's free, and then I will say Northeast Indiana just supports the heck out of it. They come out, and it seems like every year we had a show, there's 2 big days, and one day would always have maybe some bad weather in it.
Yeah, of course.
But boy, the last time we had a show, it was, I don't know what the temperatures are, but I'll say sunny and 80. Yeah. And it was It was just amazing. The people that were there, they came out for it. Everybody had to have a good show. If you didn't have a good show, you don't like aviation. One or the other, because it was the Air Guard did a phenomenal job.
I'm just curious, Scott. So you said when you were growing up in Sleepy Eye, Minnesota, and you would take the gravel path so you didn't get arrested on your motorcycle. How big was that airport that you were going to?
2 grass runways. I think there were 2,800 feet each, and they got mowed probably every 2 weeks, whether they liked it or not. When I started flying, you typically would do a low pass to make sure dogs and a couple calves weren't on the runway.
So the kind of airport you'd imagine in Sleepy Eye, Minnesota.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, it's the way it probably was a long, long time ago.
Is it still there?
It is still there,
Get out of
and
here.
it's the same way. So,
Really?
well, when I was a kid, Sleepy Eye was probably around 3,500 people total, and today it's grown to about 3,500 people.
Okay.
So it's
All right.
it hasn't moved with time. So
How do you shoo a cow off of a grass runway? That's the real question.
Okay, rapid fire.
Let's get into rapid fire. Rapid fire is something that we do with all of our guests, and it's mainly talking about getting your opinions on resources, things we have to do, things that you prefer, things that you like here in the region. So
each answer is like 10, 15 minutes.
At least, yeah.
Okay.
it's-
I got you.
I did.
have to really go on.
Yeah, you've really nailed the essence of rapid fire, Scott. Favorite thing about commercial flying?
I would say commercial flying. I'm going to modify your question a little bit.
Yeah.
Just favorite thing about the airports and being around aviation, for the most part, unless there's a bad weather day, people are in an upbeat environment. People are traveling someplace, whether it's for business or in generally happy. I do think happiness is contagious. No, that's not true on a snowy day when everybody's delayed, but for the most part, people are excited about going someplace.
It's the rule, not the exception.
It is,
Okay.
and then even if they're not from here, they're excited to be going home or something. So I like just being around the people at the
Yeah.
airport, and it's just high pace. People are moving.
Least favorite thing?
There's a lot of regulation, and I hate to say it, but I think sometimes our country is going to choke itself in regulation. But there's a lot of regulation, and some of it's required, but some of it seems like it's regulations. You know, it's
I was going to say
over-regulated.
for regulation's sake, right?
Yeah.
Window seat or aisle?
Oh, aisle.
Aisle.
That's an easy one.
It's always you get the insider.
I'll take the window so I can do something late. I fall asleep as soon as I'm on a plane, every single time.
You just lean on the person
Just-
alongside you.
If I can't have the window, the person next to me is getting my head on their shoulder. So I make a lot of enemies and friends. that
And
way.
friends, yeah.
How many times the beverage cart swing past you? on that one? How many of the famous Fort Wayne International Airport cookies do you think you've eaten in your life?
Surprisingly less than 10.
Really?
I was going to say 2. All right.
Okay, I'm genuinely surprised by that.
Yeah. Well, I think we have now hit over 3.5 million that we've passed out. So,
And you account for less than 10 of them?
yeah, and I'm
I don't
starving.
even know you sometimes. Yeah.
So,
Wait, you didn't even eat lunch today.
yeah, I'm still
What
not
is it
eating a
with
cookie.
you? You're gonna. I'm afraid you're gonna blow away.
Oh, I don't think so, guys. I'm doing okay. So,
Okay, so when you have folks that you bring into town, whether it's family or what, where's the main place you would take them? Like the one thing that kind of bucket list, you need to see this in Northeast Indiana.
So if it would be family, it's going to be probably a brew pub. I like the openness and the playfulness of the Hop Rivers. If it's maybe something more formal, I probably go to Baker Street a little bit more than the other places.
Okay.
I don't know if you've been to either one, but
Sure.
James
Both
has been a guest
are-
on the show.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh,
both are phenomenal. They're good. And I don't know, if you have a great experience, why change it up? Especially if you have someone coming to town and says, you want to take them someplace that's bad. So if you know the level of service you're going to get, you're spot on.
Hockey, baseball. Are you a Comets guy or a Tin Caps guy?
Baseball.
Ah.
Our Tin Caps guests will be very happy to hear that.
Good.
Yeah, I feel like we've had Paris
Yep.
from Hop River. We've had James and we've
from
had the Tim.
Moby Kai.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
You're in
it's
good
like-
company.
It's like
I
you've
played
listened to
hockey.
our. I thought that would be a loaded question, and we
Well,
will certainly
Minnesota,
get to
right?
that.
There's
Yeah.
a lot of
Minnesota,
ice
you had
and-
to play. Can I just add one to your?
Yeah, go for
I
it.
just want to add one to Ryan's rapid fire. Just branded it. If you could fly anything, what would it be? I mean, assuming that you knew you wouldn't get hurt or whatever, because I'm sure you don't know how to fly an Apache. But
F4 Corsair.
F4 Corsair.
That's the old World War II. It had the gull wings on them.
Oh yeah.
It's always been one of my favorite aircraft. Of course, we had one at our air show, and some of those were two-seaters, and some of them are single, and the one was a single. Or else I would have been, what size check do I have to write to get a ride?
Really?
So I don't know. It's just you default to your childhood. It's always been one of the
Sure.
That's the one.
favorite-looking aircraft that I've liked, and
Okay.
it's got that.
Have you sat in the cockpit?
I have sat in a cockpit.
Okay.
Never been able to fly that thing. And I wouldn't right now. There's probably a crap load of training, and there's a big radial engine. There's got to be a tremendous amount of torque when you hit the power on that thing.
Oh yeah.
So
Very cool.
You stumbled upon a bucket list item. I'm not going to try and top that.
Okay. Well, I think that's it. Unless you had any more questions.
No,
We're
this
good.
has been great,
Scott, listen. Congratulations on all the expansion. You guys, these guys, my team, they were right. Going through airports can be a struggle, but you guys going through there has always been a pleasure. And you guys are doing a great job. And congratulations on your expansion. Really.
yeah, well, the next time you fly, if you see something or at our airport that we can improve upon, or I hate to say it this way, but if you see something at a different airport that they're doing well, bring it back.
Absolutely.
Tell me what we can do, and we love the idea of serving and bringing a better facility and service to the region.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. And you can find us on pioneerstartshere.com, where you can tell us who else we should be talking to. You can also make comments on Ryan, if you'd like. We do. Also, you can find us on Apple Podcast and Spotify. Thanks again for joining us. Like, share, tell people about the Pioneer Podcast. We always have great people telling great stories from the region, and thanks again for joining us.